I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. Lots of news lately about the Clinton Foundation. It seems to be getting worse and worse. We had a gentleman on to talk about the Clinton Foundation, did a lot of research on it on his own. He's a big Wall Street guy. He's investigated companies like General Electric, $900 billion. He understands big numbers. I'm talking about Charles Ortel. Charles Ortel, thanks for coming on and sharing your knowledge and updating us on the Clinton Foundation.
My great pleasure, Greg. Thank you.
And I know you're transitioning into a new business where wealthy people want to give money. They not only want to invest in good companies, they want to invest in good charities. And you're going to be transitioning into a business opportunity in the future about doing workups on charities. And I guess your first big test case is the Clinton Foundation, correct?
Thanks for bringing that up. I see an opportunity here to serve the small market. It's not tens of millions of people, but the market of people that has money, concerned about the state of the current market, what's going to happen when interest rates go up, people who want to put a portion of their wealth or income into really impactful, positively impactful charities, and people who believe that and understand the history of this country, this great country, America, and feel that through the left-leaning prisms of academia, lots of the greatness of this country is being lost. And so that overlapping group of three sectors is one I want to serve starting in 2017 going forward.
Well, let's get to the Clinton Foundation. I just want to make sure that you know that you're not out there. I mean, former federal prosecutor Rudolph Giuliani says if he was still a prosecutor, a U.S. attorney, I should say, he would say that I would use the RICO Act and go after the Clinton Foundation. He thinks it's racketeering. Donald Trump, and I know, of course, it's partisan, but he says the whole thing should be shut down. Even USA Today, a fairly left-wing, Clinton, very Clinton partial newspaper, says it should be shut down. The Clinton Foundation. Is this Hillary Clinton likes to talk about the vast right-wing conspiracy? What would you call this?
I think this is an example, really, of the vast left-wing conspiracy. If you go back into the history, and with the Clintons, they like to expose just the stuff that might redound to their credit, and they always hide or try to hide the stuff that doesn't make them look so good. When you go back into the long history of the Clintons, which is a sad history in some ways, Bill and Hillary, and now I guess Chelsea, have been monetizing government service. They've been operating as really Robin Hood in reverse, stealing from the poor to reward their rich cronies through the types of actions that, whether it be the state of Arkansas long ago or more recently when Bill was president, and now looking forward when Hillary might become president, what they've been doing is been taking contributions into the foundation, contributions to their campaign, choice assignments, for friends and family, whether it be, Chelsea's various assignments, and one wonders why she was paid so much at NBC for the job she had, and how she got the job at McKinsey, and how Hillary's brother got the gold contract in Haiti, that type of stuff, which sadly is a feature in both ends of the political party. It's not simply the right that does this, the left that does this kind of stuff. The right can do it too. Independents can do it as well. So this is a long tail. And on the Clinton Foundation stuff, the official story is it begins the 23rd of October, 1997. That's the day that this main Clinton Foundation was organized as a nonprofit corporation in Arkansas. You trace that history forward, and I think what you have here is a case study in how the people, proponents of the Clinton wing of the Democratic Party, and they tend to be left-leaning, how those people got together and figured out that a charity where foreigners can give unlimited amounts of money and U.S. players can give unlimited amounts of tax-deductible money to an entity, that this could be a preferred vehicle for strengthening the Clinton wing of the Democratic Party inside this country and Clinton interests around the world.
This is, in your estimation, I mean, even the AP who broke this story about, with individuals, more than half of which gave money and then got an audience with Hillary Clinton, some millions of dollars. And but even the AP that broke that story said, well, there's no clear smoking gun. It's not play to pay. This is play to pay, is it not? Other people say it is pay to play. Very simply, pay to play. This is not charitable work.
Okay, so there's two sides of the coin. I think Peter Schweitzer and his team have done a very good job exposing this very difficult to expose pay-to-play stuff. Now, I doubt there are criminals dumb enough who sit down and write memoranda in great detail saying, all right, Greg, if you give me $1 million, I'll give you this ambassadorship. Let's sign on the dotted line here. Please wire the money to this account. I don't think you're going to find those type of records. So I actually, when I heard about this book last year, I reached out to Peter Schweitzer and I said, listen, you can spend time and energy on this, but at the end of the day, even if you write a great book and the book is good, and even if you do a movie and I was at the screening and the movie's good, in the end of the day, the skeptical press is going to say there's no evidence. On the other hand, in charity fraud, it's a very different thing. Charity fraud, unlike pay-to-play, you don't have, and unlike corporate fraud, in charity fraud, you don't have to prove intent. Under New York state law in particular, the requirement is merely that you prove that the public filings of the Clinton Foundation are false and materially misleading, and that they certainly are, which is why I think you're starting to see these editorial boards around the world say, wait a minute. And you have to prove that they solicited, not that they raised money, but that they solicited. And that the Clintons have admitted. The bill has admitted. I mean, you go and you check New York law. In order to be, quote, a professional fundraiser, and that's defined as somebody who raises a small amount of money, you have to fill out forms. Bill never did that. Bill couldn't have qualified, actually, as a professional fundraiser under New York law. Yet, the record shows in his own book, he writes about his efforts. There are multiple accounts of how Bill was instrumental in raising money for his foundation. Well, in what capacity? He wasn't a trustee or an executive of any part of the Clinton Foundation officially that I could tell until late 2009. Yet a lot of money was raised starting after October 23rd, 1997. You're going to tell me Bill Clinton didn't pick up the phone and have meetings to raise money for his foundation? And I'm going to tell you, you believe it's Santa Claus. So on the charity fraud side of life, that's the minefield for the Clintons, because once back in March 16th, 2015, I wrote an article for Breitbart that got a lot of press saying, with so many red flags, why isn't the IRS investigating the Clinton Foundation? The second the IRS, or for that matter, an attorney general or any attorney general or a state taxing authority decides to make an issue of this, the burden of proof shifts. It's not like where it is on quid pro quo, where Hillary and Bill and their minions and supporters can say, well, there's no evidence here, thinking that they've already destroyed all the evidence. Here, the charity has to come forward and prove the affirmative case. Prove that since October 23, 1997, all you've been doing exclusively has been furthering the authorized tax-exempt purposes of this foundation, which, as far as I know, from what I've seen, are merely to be a research facility and an archive based in Little Rock. Prove that that's all you've done. Show us the legally compliant and audited financial statements, which are not in the public domain, for the crucial period from the beginning through November 18th, 2004. Show us those audits. Show us, when the investigators look at it, show us the engagement letter. Show us the management representation letter. Show us the board minutes. Show us the monthly management accounts of this foundation. And show us all the financial accounts around the world. I mean, that's stuff they have to produce. Now, they don't have to produce it to any member of the public, but if the Attorney General of Arkansas, and today, I believe, in the press, or maybe it was done last night, there's an editorial from an Arkansas newspaper saying, this is problematic. So how come the Republican Attorney General of the state of Arkansas hasn't made an issue of this? I mean, how come they haven't yanked it up and looked at it? I understand why the IRS might not have. I mean, the head of the IRS is facing down contempt of Congress and possible impeachment over his behavior. I understand that part of it. Well, I don't understand why the state of Attorney General of Arkansas hasn't made an issue of this, and in other states.
This is like Bill and Hillary are like a couple of gangsters. Are they not? I mean, you call it Robin Hood in reverse. It's some modern version of that.
Another way to talk about them is the Bonnie and Clyde of charity, or the Al Capone of charity, the Capone Foundation. I mean, when you look at this, and when I thought about this, again, I don't like the Clintons. I know their history. It's in the public domain. I don't like the example they've set people in this country and around the world. And here's some very talented people in theory, academically, who had, you can't claim they had no advantages after they got through their college and law school careers. And look what a mess they've made of their lives. Look what bad lessons. I mean, Hillary wrote that book, It Takes a Village. You could argue that the book she would write about the charities, It Takes a Pillage. That they make their money going around natural disasters in Haiti and India and other places, asserting that there's a massive need for cash, and then making sure that the cash comes in to address that need gets diverted, or at least is not accounted for properly. So, this is a tale that when I lit upon it last February, March, I said, this is a tale that needs to get told, but it's not a tale that, people are going to swallow at first blush, given how powerful the Clintons are, how vengeful they are when they are in power, and the likelihood back then, and perhaps arguably even now, that Hillary might be the next president of the United States. So I knew I had to study the ground carefully and share with as many investigators on the right, left, center, inside and outside this country what I saw. And I've been doing that now for many months. And I think you're seeing the fruits of that in these editorials and these news analyses. And, you haven't had anybody engage on the facts yet. You have, Hillary's press people who now think the way to get through it is just simply to attack Trump and say, well, I may be bad, but Trump's worse. We deserve better than that in 2016.
You're saying that, forget the quid pro quo, the play to pay, which it looks obvious to a lot of people. You're saying, hey, on the filings, she is toast. You can prove that case charity fraud all day long.
Absolutely, especially, her gravest exposure is from the period when she left Secretary of State, so call it February 2013, through the period where she announced for president in, I think, March of 2015 or so. In that time frame, she was a trustee. And actually, the way our laws work, if you're married to somebody, as Bill and Hillary still are married, then, if your spouse is engaged running a charity, even if you're the Secretary of State or Senator or whatever, and you can't actually be involved with a charity, you're deemed to be somebody in a position to exercise substantial influence and control over the charity. So actually, Hillary has exposure from the very beginning, from October 23rd, 1997, right the way through. She has massive exposure in the period from February 2013 through March 2015, because that's when fraudulent financial statements were repeatedly put into the public domain. And that's when Bill was being paid, and Hillary was getting a share of it, massive sums from this for-profit educational operation, Laureate, that are undeserved and indefensible, and not reported in the filings.
Anybody with money who gave big money to this, they basically, what you're saying is, they gave money to a charity fraud and deducted it. And these people, big money people, are going to say, well, I thought this was a charity. And you're saying, it doesn't pass. It's not a charity. The paperwork isn't there for a charity. That's got to freak out big money people who gave money to the Clintons. They have wrapped them up into a criminal fraud, did they not?
Now, I'll tell you, it's really bad in that regard. So there's two pieces to this puzzle. I mean, two sides of this coin. The one side, let's take the side that's the surprising side. The trustees of the Clinton Foundation, these outside people, there are a few people who are worth, multiple billions. There's one fellow I think is worth close to 20 billion, whose daughter's a trustee. And, those people have massive exposure here, because trustees cannot, of a charity, say, well, I didn't know this was going on, or, this is just some accountant ticked the wrong box, or the lawyer got it wrong. You only agree under our laws in this country and in the particular states where this thing operates to be a trustee if you have the time, the training, and the inclination to exercise the three duties that you're supposed to exercise, the three principal duties. The duty of care, which means that you take the time to familiarize yourself with the charity and really understand what's going on. The duty of obedience, which means that you understand that as a charity, you can't engage in any illegal activities, any state, federal, foreign, none. And the duty of loyalty. And then that duty is that if there's a conflict of interest between protecting the valuable tax exemption of the charity and your own personal self-interest, you fall on your sword personally to protect the charity. And of course, they haven't done that. So the trustees have massive financial exposure here, which I don't think is insurable, because you can't insure against fraud. And even if they have insurance carrying policy, that was procured in a fraudulent transaction, so that'll get unwound.
These people are going to turn on them. I mean, the fraud is okay as long, you're doing it. But they're involved. These people, Bill and Melinda Gates, gave what, $200 million? You told me in the pre-interview. They're going to be mighty pissed when they figure out they're liable for fraud, are they not?
Well, see, that's the second piece of it. The second piece of it is the IRS doesn't have the ability to police every charity. There are like 1.2 million of them. So they rely on trustees to exercise those three duties. And one of the hooks they have to punish charities and to ensure compliance is that if you're the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I would guess those people are good people, but if you're sloppy enough to have an organization, excuse me, that doesn't do the diligence that should be done on this foundation, that is to say the Clinton Foundation, and over a period that began in 2001, I believe, stretches to the present, you've given more than $200 million on multiple grants, multiple different purposes, where you've either missed all these facts or you knew about it and you're complicit in them. And the problem with the Gates Foundation is that a lot of people invest in charities supported by the Gates Foundation under a theory that Bill Gates is a pretty smart guy and his wife is a smart lady and they must have smart people around them. And if Gates is supporting this, how bad could it be? So, when you provide cover through a large donation, in this case to the Clinton Foundation, 200 million or so, and its various entities, when you do that, you are basically enabling charity fraud. And so people who want to make an issue of this, and I would guess there are quite a few civil people lawyers that might want to make an issue, and in time, state and foreign and even federal authorities might want to make an issue of it. Who do you go after? Go after people with a lot of money. And that's, I think, where we're starting to get here. I think we're seeing in these editorial boards, and I did not expect, and I have subsequently been in contact with most people who've written on this. I didn't expect the Boston Globe to kick it off last week, with the editorial that I thought was good and frankly didn't go far enough because it didn't question the activities of the Clinton Foundation other than being an archive. But you're seeing vast media interest in this. It's only going to get bigger, I think, as we get closer to the election. And soon, I would hope that some of these authorities, I'm told the FBI is investigating this in league with certain U.S. attorneys. I would hope that foreign governments would look at this. And the government of Australia ought to ask, how was it that a former leader spent so much money towards the Clinton Foundation, yet we don't really seem to know what happened to it? Same in North.
Charles, I you know what? In the background, I hear the fat lady singing. She is done. If what you say is correct, the case is already there for a massive global fraud. It's there. Forget pay to play. Forget that. It's a massive charity fraud. The case is already made. That's what you're saying.
Well, that's the first step. If you get them on charity fraud, then when you go through and you start pulling the records on pay for play, that's when lots of people start singing. So on this question of pay to play that Schweitzer has begun to get into, I'll give you a case in point. I've pointed this out to Peter, and I believe the Canadian authorities are looking into it. One of the big cases that Peter gets into is this whole Uranium One thing with a character called Frank Giustra.
That's just so people know, Uranium One is a company that I want to say 9 donors gave $145 million to the Clinton Foundation, and then the donors made money, and a big chunk of our uranium production ended up in the Russian hands. Go ahead.
So the issue with that most people don't get because they don't study the international law is that Canadian charity law is extremely tough. And under Canadian law, a Canadian citizen can't give money to a foreign charity and obtain a tax deduction unless the foreign charity has received a donation from the Canadian federal government. And that didn't happen until June 2nd, 2010. The transactions that you're talking about where monies went towards the Clinton Foundation, and by the way, it was illegally constituted when the monies went towards the Clinton Foundation, I believe happened before then. So the Canadian donors are in trouble if the Canadian tax authorities start looking at it. But worse, the Canadian authorities take this whole issue that I've been talking about, of what is the tax-exempt purpose of the foundation, very seriously. So the Clinton-Giustra partnerships were managed under what's called an agency agreement by the Clinton Foundation, except the Clinton Foundation never had legal authority to do that and never registered that operation properly inside New York, where principals of the Clinton Foundation were involved, in theory, doing this work. So once you start pulling on this string, not only does Mr. Giusta have a problem, not only are there pay-to-play issues, but in addition, the Canadian government gave money to the Clinton Foundation, and they're going to be deeply distressed to understand, at least the people of Canada should be deeply distressed to learn that Canadian politicians were channeling taxpayer money to this fraudulent charity. And it's not just in Canada. The people of Ireland should be concerned, the UK, France, Norway, Australia, Korea, Spain, little countries, smaller countries around the world. And today in the press, the city government of Flanders, which is part of Belgium, may have given money. When you start pulling on the string, none of these government grants from the inception of the foundation have ever properly been disclosed. In New York, there are special, stricter rules than the U.S. rules about the identities of government donors. And the forms for the period 97 through 2007 still do not list out, as they need to, the identities of every government that has given any money to the Clinton Foundation, nor are the forms proper from 2008 forward. So,
well, wow. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. So, go ahead.
So when you start pulling on this string, when it looked, and back in March of 2015, it certainly looked as if Hillary might be the next president of the United States. And so people, are reluctant to take on Clinton too. I mean, when Clinton won under Bill, they had no money. They were homeless in the White House. So, they didn't have the type of resources they might have had should Hillary win again. But with money, Hillary too would be a formidable force to oppose. And so a lot of people thought, well, I better not do that. Now, with all this press and, with the world in turmoil, arguably in part because of her bad work as Secretary of State.
Libya, Syria, name it. Russian reset. Go ahead.
And then with her, Trump wants to cut corporate tax rates. She wants to raise, keep them where they are, the highest in the world. I mean, when you look at Hillary's statements about policy, she's way to the left of Bill. You got to remember, Bill was a centrist on economics, arguably somewhat right-wing, particularly in criminal justice, compared to Obama and now compared to Hillary. So you have in Hillary somebody who's far to the left. The world's blowing up. The economy, I would argue, is blowing up. America's laden with debt. There are lots of reasons why even you pick whoever you might want to pick as the best president in history. George Washington, if you want to say. I mean, George Washington, they say about him that, he could never tell a lie, and here Hillary Clinton cannot tell the truth. I mean...
Well, I am seeing the picture you're painting. These people are going to turn on her. Her donors, supporters, are going to be her adversaries, not the right-wing conspiracy, the left-wing. They're going to say, what, you did what? I got involved in what? You embarrass the countries, individuals, the wealthy, bureaucrats. They're going to turn on her, are they not?
Well, I'm seeing that, actually. Some of the people who've been reaching out to me are actually people on the hard left, progressives. And there are actually areas of common ground, surprisingly, between conservatives and progressives. For example, one would be this, that, I think on the right and the left, we can safely agree that charity fraud is horrible, it's despicable. And so, a lot of people on the left, are just, some of them don't like the Clintons, frankly, because they don't think Bill is far enough to the left. But put that aside, people on the left don't like this aspect of it. People on the left and the right don't like the idea that our own state, or that is to say the federal government, would snoop on us. People on the right, why are we doing this? Why are we setting up an electronic snooping state?
Yeah, but back to the Clinton Foundation, though. They are, what I'm hearing from you, then people that contact you are saying, Charles, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, but I can't support Hillary. she's going to end up. I don't see how she can be president at this point. I mean, I'm going to just come right out right now. But what you're telling me that forget the trying to prove pay to play. She's done. She's got a huge global, many tentacle charity fraud that they cannot stop at this point. I mean, can they?
No, you can't put Humpty Dumpty back on the wall again on this one. And I have to say, I reached out. I live here in the West Village in Manhattan, and where I was raised. And so I have a lot of friends on the left, actually. We don't talk much about politics, but I have quite a few friends on the left. And last year, I reached out to very powerful people in the Democratic Party, and I said, listen, you really do not want to nominate Hillary Clinton and the Clintons as your candidate because they are not going to make it across the finish line. And I implored them, I said, please, I'm all for a vigorous contest between now we have Trump and whoever they want to put up. If it's Bernie Sanders or somebody like Bernie Sanders, let's have that contest. But Hillary is not going to make it across the finish line.
Whoa, man! Well, I've been saying for months I couldn't believe that the Democrats put up such a weak candidate, dragging an enormous bag of dirt, and the bag is filling up. Am I wrong?
You're not.
Charles Ortel, one last thing with Hillary Clinton. Do you think this is her undoing? You just said that she can't make it across the finish line. You think this charity fraud and what you're hearing and from all your contacts and people that are contacting you, there's no way that she can be president at this point because that they'd be prosecuting her in the White House, would they not?
Well, let's take a simple way of thinking about it. There's a representative down in Florida named Corinne Brown. And she was in the press last 24 hours or so. She had an indictment against her for an $800,000 charity fraud. This is a 69-year-old African-American Democrat super delegate supporter for Hillary. Over an $800,000 slush fund, I think it's the U.S. attorney in Jacksonville area. You can see the indictment. It's brutal. Over that $800,000 slush fund, she now faces 357 years in prison. How do you explain to the 69-year-old candidate to be, elected as a congressman in a new special district or breaking up her district, but she's been serving in Congress since 1993? How do you explain that this Democrat 69-year-old woman faces 357 years in prison over an $800,000 charity slush fund fraud when Hillary Clinton, who is, I suppose, around the same age, is going to escape? I mean, how is that fair?
And how big is Hillary Clinton's fraud compared to $800,000 in your estimation?
Well, what we know about what they declare is $2 billion. My estimate, it's more like $100
billion. You're calling it right here. No way Hillary Clinton can be president. Am I getting that right?
I mean, look, I'm not a political expert. Many things can happen, but based on what we know now and what I foresee happening in the near future, I think the smart money, and remember, behind every politician, except perhaps for Trump, or maybe even in the case of Trump, there's the money crowd. And the last thing the money crowd wants to do is to waste money or spend money and get drawn in as a defendant and deep pocket into a fraud. So the money crowd that I know, and I know quite a few of them, looking at this, have to say at this point, do you feel lucky? Do you really want to bet that between today, and Election Day on the 8th of November, that the Clintons are going to be able to keep this under control? Do you want to bet that the economy is not going to blow up? Do you want to bet that there aren't going to be geopolitical flashpoints exploding that will draw the spotlight on Hillary Clinton's record the last time she came close to the levers of power? Do you really want to think that the American public is so stupid that they believe that it makes sense to turn the keys of power, the prosecutorial discretion at the top, to Team Clinton, when President Obama, who wasn't exactly a friend following the ways in which Bill Clinton mouthed off during the 2008 campaign, when they had that MOU that didn't work, do you really want to believe that Hillary Clinton, and Team Clinton will do the right, follow the...
And you're hearing, but we'll do the right thing. But you're hearing from your contacts. Let me get in here with it. You're hearing from your contacts, money contact, big money. You know people that are worth millions, maybe billions, but tens of millions, hundreds of billions. Big money is saying, "Ooh, Charles, we don't like what we're seeing." That's what you're hearing. Big money is
Well,
running from Clinton.
no, I wouldn't put it that way. I mean, I reached out to big money, and I know billionaires. And, I think at this stage, many people do know that I'm pretty much involved looking at this. So I'm not exactly getting, fresh reports in from Hillary Clinton's backers on this. But I think, even though there are people on both sides, frankly, I call it the uniparty, the right and left wings here of one big.
I call it the criminal crony class, but go ahead.
All right. There are decent people, really decent people. And as we age, we get more concerned about, leaving a good record behind and supporting charities that might do good work. So there are good people on the left and there are good people on the right. And I think it's gotten to a point where it'd be very tough for Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, knowing what the world knows now, to look their daughters in the eye, look their daughters' friends in the eye, and say, we should really make sure that Hillary makes it across the line here. That to me explains why I found it surprising that according to press reports, the Obamas did not attend Bill's 70th birthday, and then why did Barack just say that he's not going to the final Clinton Global Initiative? I think they know. I also think that I'll point out that the Obamas have a conflict of interest here for two reasons. One, Michelle and Barack gave $200,000+ to the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund, which is a fraud, in 2010. And when this gets unstuck, if they want to go after them, they'll go after them for a small amount of money. But more important, Barack Obama is running a foundation after he gets out of office, and that foundation has some problems with it already. It's not been organized properly. So, I think that even the Obama team is going to, look themselves in the eye, maybe not today, maybe not till after Labor Day, maybe not till after the debate, and say, you know what, this dog does not hunt. And we either have to let it go down in flames, or we've got to do a Torricelli. If you remember, Senator Torricelli was a deeply flawed re-election candidate for Senate, and they replaced him, even though they really weren't supposed to do that. So I think we could see some drama.
Woo! Boy, I'll tell you, what a bomb you dropped. What a bomb you dropped on this whole thing. Thank you for explaining the difference between the pay-to-play and the charity fraud. No doubt about it. Charity fraud, stone cold busted, global. It's just unbelievable to me that the way you laid it out, and that there isn't more fallout, but more fallout is coming on this, I think, for sure. Charles Ortel, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com. I hope you come back.
Anytime, Greg. Thanks.